Thank you. Yes. So what God spoke to me about was being patient and persevering. And I'll read James 5 from verse 7 to 8. It says, therefore be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives the early and latter rain. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Something that stood out to me was establish your hearts. And so I searched on what establish means. I mean, we know what establish means, but sometimes I like to give it more context. And it says to make firm or stable. So I believe that this is a word that God is calling women who are building in this season. Establish your hearts, make firm, stable, stand your ground. Establish your hearts in the Lord is what I kept hearing and what I kept repeating to myself. Establish your hearts in the Lord. So make firm or stable your hearts in the Lord and be patient and persevering, right? So something else God spoke to me about, building with God requires patience. It requires grit. Patience builds endurance. It is not enough to move on to the next thing when you face challenges and where you're always looking for the low-hanging fruit or the easy way of doing things. That's not going to cut it anymore. This is now the time to be patient and build endurance, right? And randomly, the Holy Spirit spoke to me about weapons of warfare. Now, I don't know how it's tied, but I'm going to share it anyways. And we all know, like, you know, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty in the pulling down of strongholds. But the two things that were very specific that God laid on my heart, it's praise, it's two P's, right? Praise. And the second one is a positive mindset and speech. So praise being one thing, praising in all seasons, in and out of seasons, when things are going good, when things are going bad, when you understand what you're doing, when you don't understand what you're doing, when you're in pain, when you're not, when you're happy, whatever the case may be, praising in all situations and all circumstances. And the second one is having a positive mindset and speech. The mindset is one thing, but then the speech, everything that flows out of your mouth has to be positive and has to be good, because what you're doing is you're reaffirming what God has already said concerning you, whether the situation looks like it or not. When you speak, you're bringing forth something into life, right? You're birthing things that be not as though they are. And then when you start to speak of things that be not as though they are, then they start to take shape and actually come into life. They start to become. And so our speech leads us to becoming. It leads us to the higher call that God is calling us to. So positive mindset and praise are the weapons of our warfare. Weapons of our warfare in business, it could be, I don't know, in our family, in whatever it is that we might be dealing with. It could be our mindset, just always constantly, even in the place of lack, or in the place, God forbid, we don't even lack anything. The Lord is our shepherd, we lack nothing. But just whatever the case may be, just staying in a place of praise and having a positive mindset and speech in whatever we do. And I'll just read James 1:2. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. I'll say it again, James 1:2 in the NKJV version. If someone can put it in the group, in the chat, that'll be great. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. And so by God's grace, we even lack nothing in the first place, but that we allow patience to do its perfect work in us, even as we build. So welcome again, Aisha. Welcome to Build to Last. We're so excited to have you here. Our first
thanks for having me.
Please let's give her Naija, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Aisha. And I feel like this is more for me than even for your audience, honestly. As you were speaking, I'm like, Lord, you are so intentional.
Yeah, thank you, God.
Yeah, God is he's doing something.
Yes, he is.
Hi, hello.
Yeah, so I will read out your bio quickly, and then we'll go into the questions.
The whole thing.
No, not the whole thing. Don't worry.
Okay, we only have 1 hour.
Yeah, I'm very
yes, please go.
I know we're good. So Aisha Ayensu, I hope I said that well. Ayensu is the founder and creative director of the internationally acclaimed luxury fashion label Christie Brown, a ready-to-wear made in Ghana brand designed for the woman to feel confident and be the truest version of herself. I love that. It is named after another inspiring female, her grandmother. Love that even more. Aisha Ayensu reimagines traditional artisanal techniques and incorporates them into modern silhouettes, clothing some of the world's most influential women. Under her leadership, the brand has attained global relevance with coverage on the most prominent media and publications such as CNN, BBC, France 24, Vogue, Marie Claire, to name a few. Aisha is an influential voice in the African fashion industry and has received international recognition in various instances with industry experience spanning over a decade. Aisha is also an alumnus Global Shaper of the World Economic Forum under the Accra Hub and is an International Visitors Leadership Program alumnus under the US State Department. She's quite committed to advancing the cause of women in leadership across the African continent. So everyone, join me in welcoming Aisha on Built to Last. Welcome.
Yay. I'm happy to be here, actually.
Yeah, we're excited to have you
here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So the first question we always ask everyone is, what does building with God mean to you? And you can start by telling us about your background, just sharing about you before you speak on what building with God means to you. Yeah.
Okay. So as you know, my name is Aisha. I am the founder and creative director of Christie Brown, as mentioned in the bio. I am Ghanaian, born, bred, fully educated here. So I studied, I did my secondary school year, primary school, everything, and I went to the University of Ghana where I studied psychology. Now, fashion was a passion of mine. It always has been. And as you read earlier, Christie Brown, the name is actually my grandmother's name. So everybody says, oh, it must have been in your blood. I've always loved fashion. If I didn't go to Legon, I'd have gone to fashion school, but at the time it was too expensive. So I'm like, let me just advise myself. Because I wanted to go abroad and go to fashion school, but that didn't happen. So I studied psychology in Legon. But I always say that the home that I came from, my parents I grew up in a very interesting home, I find. They were very liberal, almost liberal to a fault, but they just really allowed us to be. And my parents they're both quite Pan-Africanist, right? So I grew up around rich conversation about the continent where we should be and revolutionary leaders who have, the Thomas Sankaras of this world. So I think that there's also that genuine care and love for the continent. I say this to just, did something happen?
Oh no, I'm here.
I'm seeing myself.
No, it's okay.
It's kind of weird. How do I? Okay, there it is. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to be talking to myself. Okay. So, so I say this to just explain how even Christie Brown started. So I love fashion. Then there was the continent. And my mother she's a bit of a feminist, not in the sense where she's really pro women and just women having a voice from a very young age. Like I grew up seeing her and my dad and his friends going toe to toe on any kind of debate, and she would more often than not win. And I also saw my dad treat my mom as an equal in our home. It was never this is your role and that's your role. So I believe that all these things shaped why I formed Christie Brown, or why I built, I decided to start a brand like Christie Brown. Because in 2008, whilst I was in uni, there was a period where now everybody says, everyone's talking about African fashion, but there's a period back then, which was that's when terms like Afropolitan even started or came about, where there's all this positivity around the continent on the rise. There was the term Africa Rising. There's so many things happening all over the world. People were moving back home, whether it's to Ghana, to Nigeria. You were seeing a lot of Africans doing well all over the world. And I was so inspired by that. And I thought, okay, I'm going to, be a part of this movement. Very naive at the time. Remember, I was in uni, so I didn't even realize the journey ahead. But it was really about that. I'm like, how am I going to be? Like, to be a part of this movement, one, and it's what I love. I didn't see myself working in psychology. And so that's how the brand was birthed. It was from that need to be a part of telling the story of this new Africa. So it was beautiful. If only I'd known that life was going to life. It's not easy, the idea of starting a business, but I was so committed. I thought we're going to build a luxury fashion brand right here from the continent, and we'll be able to sit at par with any other one anywhere in the world. And yeah, that's how the journey began for me.
Well, that's what you built, right? Yeah.
Or building.
Okay, yeah, that's what you're building. So what would you say, what does building with God mean to you?
I would say, and as I was going through your pointers, I was reflecting, and I realized that I've always been, quite spiritual, right? But I was a regular, uni girl. I did everything. I've lived. I have to say, I've done everything. Like I said, my parents are quite liberal, so they didn't stop us from going out, whatever it is, clubbing, etc. But I still had a certain connection, like a deeper connection with God. It was my personal journey. So there was that. But starting a business or a brand like Christie Brand, I think it even drew me closer to God, because the journey is not smooth, and there's so much uncertainty that I needed that anchor. And I was yearning for God. I was seeking God in a sense, like, Lord, help me with this. Like, I don't know where I'm going with this thing. So that this decision to start this brand is what I believe also led me closer to God or deepened my walk with. So I wouldn't say when I first started, I said, Lord, you're the very foundation of what I'm doing. No, but it came later and it's evolved over time to a point where I realized that, look, everything that you're doing is not by your mind, it's not by any creativity, but it's because he has handpicked you, Aisha, to do this. It is part of his assignments for you. So that's when the realization came that I would do nothing without him when it comes to this business. Every step we take, everything that we do, whether it's inspiration, the Lord is really at the very foundation of this brand. So he is the business partner. He is the board chair of Christie Brown. And sometimes people don't understand why I'll take certain decisions or why I'll decide, I'll say we should go in one direction or the other. But when I feel very strongly about it, and I know that this is a clear instruction, we move in that direction. And everything that has happened in the trajectory of the brand is testament to the fact that he is in this journey with Christie Brown.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my next question will come from what you just said. How do you, and I know that a lot of people would want to know this, but how do you, make those decisions with God? How do you know that it's God telling you specifically to do something? Even though it's something crazy or it doesn't seem like, maybe your team feels like, wow, this doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but how do you know it's God, and how are you intentional in building that hearing God's voice, I would say?
For me, it's making time to actually hear his voice. And committing to building that relationship. You know how they say, seek ye first the kingdom of God, or even the relationship with God. Not so much, yes, I'm paying my tithe, I'm going to church, but it's really, just building that intimacy with God. I think, and it's like a muscle that is also built over time. The more you do it, the more you set yourself apart. Like, remove yourself from the noise. Like, that's what I do basically. And my team will realize that sometimes I send a message at 3 a.m. in the morning. I know. And I always say, I don't expect you to answer now, but it's just when.
Okay, but that's when the revelation came.
That's when I
yeah.
don't want to lose it. And it's in those moments or those times, and I realized that there are different seasons or different phases. The way I know that is God is sometimes He wake me up at the same time every day for that season, and I know that this is time we're meant to be talking about something. And I keep saying talking because like I know people would like to make it about religion with prayer, and prayer, it is prayer, but see it as you're talking to your Father, and He reveals so many things to you. There are times when I just know in my spirit that I'm talking to God about this, or He is downloading to me. And there's a thing that God does with me where I have different postures with God. So there are seasons where I am at His feet. You know, like how you are sitting at someone's feet and your head is on their lap. There are times like that. Then there are times where He's literally holding my hand this way and I'm standing. It's almost like, I know you're weak, but just hold on. And it's like He's gripped my hand this way. And I know it's really one of those, it's a connection. So when I'm in the different postures, whatever I hear or feel or sense in my spirit, I know that it's coming from God. And it's through prayer, it's just through worship, it's through spending time in His presence. It's not enough to just say and caption, I'm so grateful to God. No, it is those intimate moments or those special times that we spend with our Father that we realize that, no, He talks to us all the time. The other way too that I am sure that it's in is how things are orchestrated, that I know very well that it wasn't by my efforts, it wasn't by any effort of mine. I was just honestly obeying and doing my part. Exactly. Because I get, you have friends who say, oh, but Aisha, you need to be a lot more, you need to be here by now. And I'm thinking, I'm moving in the pace of grace, right? It's not, it doesn't mean I'm not ambitious, but I understand this calling and I understand the ways of my Father and how He does His things. So if something hasn't happened, for example, for the brand or the business at a certain time, it does not mean that maybe it's not right for us or it's not the set time. And I'm saying it this way, but sometimes it can be frustrating. I'm like, things need to move. We need to go in this direction or the other. But it always happens and at the right time. So if it is not the hand of God, I don't know what it is. Right? Yeah. So that's for me, that's how I know. It's those quiet moments and you know it in your spirit and in your guts.
Wow. There's a song that I sing a lot and sing it a lot in my church. It says, may I never be too fast, I think. May I never be late. Yes. Help me to walk in your ways. Help me to walk at your pace, I think.
And even know your ways or something.
Yes. Yeah, but that song, I feel like that is like literally a cry for businesses, is that you're not moving too fast, you're not moving too slow, and you're working at the pace of God. But I like what you said, because everything you've said has related to rest in a sense, just being in that place of rest. When you operate from rest, then a lot of things just kind of flow. They flow naturally. So you're not trying to force things, you're not trying to orchestrate things, but you're also working hard. It's not like you're not.
It's not like you're not exactly.
But you're allowing God position you
to take the And sometimes it might feel as though, am I not moving? Am I not, especially in a world now where it's always a boss lady, boss chick, make you move. And there's a way it's made. There's a way it's made to sound. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? But the Holy Spirit has a way of also nudging me when I am not. When I'm not moving in the pace of grace, and the pace of grace is not always slow. Sometimes there's a period where you're meant to run. And when you're in tune with when you're in tune with your Father and he can see that this is my daughter, she's slacking. There's a certain stirring that God will bring, even if it's not within you. There will be something will happen around you that will push you into your next level. And we hear about these stories all the time, but I'm testament to that. I see it all the time. Even now, I'm going through a phase like that, and I'm like, Lord, I get it. Yeah, like I understand. I understand what you're doing. let me nudge myself, or let me make myself a little bit more uncomfortable because you are in this, but it takes time. It takes us spending time in his presence and nurturing that intimate relationship with God. And it's never perfect. You never reach it, right? It's ongoing. There are times we dip a bit, and you realize that the times where you dip in that building that relationship with God, you find that that's when the anxiety comes in, and then you want to try to do something in your own strength. But we just need to recalibrate and go at this again.
We'll keep going. Thank you for that. So that leads me to the next question. So what has been the most exciting part about building a fashion brand in Africa? So, and then it will also come to the next question. Yes, exciting. And also maybe, you can just share, basically, it could be the downsides, it could be the upsides as well. But then we'll also lead into the next question on what has kept you going and staying consistent for over 10 years. But let's focus on building a fashion brand. So let's say we have people who are on this call who are building a brand. It might not be fashion, or it might be fashion, but just think generally. What has been the most exciting part? How have you kept God in the midst of everything, and how have you kept going?
So exciting part. I think it's for me in fashion, it's starting at a time where there weren't many brands like mine, especially, for example, in Accra. You had there were the big designers, but it was more custom made. It was, and they are the OGs over here. So there's little me starting this brand, and I'd always had the intention of having it be ready to wear, right? But it's the ups and downs and the challenges and overcoming them, right? And finding a way around one thing or another. I find it quite exciting because I believe that we're building a model that didn't exist, right? So you're building something that you didn't have a case study to look at and say, okay, this is how it's done. This is how to build a ready-to-wear brand here. First you do X, and then you do X. It's trial and error. Some work out. When the ones that work out, that's where the excitement comes. It's COVID. I'm excited to do a virtual show, and that in itself was a game changer for the business. But it's those periods. It's times where you see creativity, just come to life, and when you see people appreciate it, that's really, it's a plus. It's a true plus, especially when you're walking in your purpose and someone else is appreciating exactly the way you intended. And it's doing exactly what, because we always say that with Christie, the clothes are meant to make you feel a way. You're meant to feel like, I can walk into that room and do anything. So when I hear those stories and I interact with women who say that, listen, I was going to this board meeting, I put my Christie Brown jacket on, and the way I delivered. And for me, that's really fulfilling, and it's exciting to see. There was another part of the question you said.
Yeah, before you even go there, there's something I wanted to say, because I remember when we released this collection, and I remember sending you a message. I said, I'm going to wear this when I address the UN. Do you remember? UN assembly. I was like, this is what I'm wearing. So I understand what you mean by how it makes women feel. And so I'm also still manifesting that when I'm about
manifesting
to
please, you better wear your CV jacket. Call me.
Oh, so you remember the jacket?
Yes, I do. And it's that. It's seeing that, hearing those stories, you'll be amazed, So then that also spurs me on to do more and keep creating. So it's so I guess anyone listening, starting a brand, just realizing that it's a calling, and it's bigger than us. The moment we start to feel as though it's about us and, look at me, let me shine, you lose the plot. But it's really about, there's a reason why this gift is meant to flow through you. It's impacting somebody's life. And when that happens, it gives you even much more fulfillment than the look at me, I'm a superstar, feeling. So that's what I would
say. Totally relate to that. So on the back of that, what has kept you consistent for over 10 years of building? So for people who are just starting out, who probably are just at the beginning and they're like, this is even already a lot. What has kept you going for? or for 10 years?
It's a commitment, I guess, you make to yourself very early to excellence. And it's also important that the why is, why you're doing this is so well articulated and clear. And like I always say, much bigger than oneself. The moment, because for me, it was really about attaining, maybe being on CNN or something, then you've done that, right? Then you can just relax and say, listen, the biggest deal in this part of whatever, so nobody can touch me now, and then you get complacent. But when you're committed to excellence, in a sense, right, that I could always do better. So for me, I'm a bit of a perfectionist in that regard. I'm my biggest critic, but it helps me. I put out a collection and I'm never satisfied. I know it's bad, but and my team will probably be rolling their eyes, but it's never. So it's on to the next one. Okay, what next? I'm always looking at like, I wish I'd added this, or I think next time we should do it this way, or we can build on one thing or another. It's just that commitment to always putting out better and doing better. And I think that has also kept the brand consistently growing and consistently relevant. Because it's not a joke. For 15 years, you've been, either in press or having someone appreciate your work and still maintaining that.
15 years.
15, can you imagine? Yeah. So it's that commitment. The other thing too is people. It's my people or the people that have come into the life of Christie Brown to move it along. And it's not just so much about the longevity of or how long they stay for, but if for whatever period they are in the brand, there's something they do and they move it along. And then someone else comes in and they move it along to the next phase. And another comes in, they move it to the next phase. So sometimes when you lose people ahead, but then we also have to understand that there are seasons to this. But our people, or my people, I see that my people is at the core of, it's why we've been consistent. I'll give you an example. So Gladys, who is a retail manager currently, Gladys was was she my first, well, she started off as my assistant, because I started out, it was overwhelming. And so Gladys used to work with me when I was working out for my dad's study in my parents' house. So there was no shop or anything. This is the hustle days. And she has been with me on this journey to date. So I want to say maybe 13 years or 14. Now it's people like that. So when people say, oh, Christie Brown, how do you do it? It's God bringing people like a Gladys into your life to move this thing to where it's supposed to go. That the times where you open your purse or you can be there, there's a Gladys who is there handling things and making sure that people are not walking in and feeling like, I'm turning right back out. Because Aisha can be everywhere, right? It's the Vanessas who, Vanessa is my business partner and Christie Brown now, actually. But how is that? We were friends. I started the Brown and she saw that, listen, I needed help. And she had started working in fashion and she thought, oh, Aisha, I could really support you on this. And that's how we started working together. She was in Montreal, I was in Ghana. But we made it work. In the beginning, it was as simple as even sometimes answering emails that I couldn't attend to. And so we don't miss certain opportunities, or having someone to fly into Lagos for shows and be backstage with me. So because it is that you need people to move this journey along. So it's very important for us to appreciate everybody, the tailors, sometimes assistants. My best intern has been one who came from a high school. And she gave a pattern, we use patterns to make, so they're all over the place. She devised a certain system to file these patterns. She went and got these bins and thought, okay, we can keep them by collection. But imagine now at high school, maybe she wasn't even 18, right? But it's all those people that come in and along this journey. Ruka, my business coach, she was a business coach for the longest time. How did we meet her? She walked into the first Christie Brown store. It was a little matchbox, but she liked the clothes and so on. She worked at PwC at the time. So she walked in and she thought, this is nice, this is interesting. So she kept asking Gladys, who is this? Who owns this thing? Who is this Aisha? I want to meet her. But then she saw the potential in the brand and she said to me that I'm going to coach you to build structure into this business because I see where this is going. Now, her taking a chance on me, I couldn't afford her coaching fees at the time, but was it not God-led? Like she was brought into our lives for a reason. What didn't we start, manual, the HR manual, processes for the different departments, even a schedule for me. But just all those things that happened along the journey, right? And this was maybe 2012. But it's people. It's people. I'll give another example. There's always the talk of, Beyonce's Mrs. Carter show and Christie Brown clothes, but this was maybe 2014 or so, before like the new wave of brands that Beyonce had highlighted. So there was this concert, Mrs. Carter show, where we got a call to create the costumes and stuff. That was huge at the time. But how did it happen? It wasn't just by chance. They were looking for an African designer. Someone on Beyonce's team called someone she went to college with that, I know you're from Africa. You know how they go. I know you're from Africa. She's from Ghana. And she said, do you know any brands? She now mentioned Christie Brown. And they did their research, and out of the lot, they picked us to make those costumes. But again, it's people advocating for you. Speaking about you in rooms that you may never even enter. So so that's for me, it's just building relationships is really important. Everything starts from there. And when people come into our lives, we should appreciate that they're there for a reason and a purpose, especially for us kingdom businesses, that we understand that God is orchestrating things. He's playing, he's moving things around to make this dream or vision move along. So it's how we treat them. Sometimes we err, sometimes we wrong them, but how do we course correct? So that's also one of the reasons why we have stayed consistent over the years. It's the different people who have come in and out of the brand to enhance it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I remember the last time we actually had a proper sit-down conversation was like 2 years ago. And there was something you told me about your people. Now that you're talking about people, I want us to address that. You told me about your people. So how many people do you have on your team now?
We have in total about maybe close to 80.
80, yeah. Well, you told me how, like, the processes you were building for them, like, they had health insurance, they had, like, were proper taking care of your people. Can you speak to that a little bit before we go into?
Very, very early on, there's certain things that as a small business, when we started out, it didn't make sense to do. And it seemed as though, or in Ghana, like at the time, people worked on weekends, especially, out here, but don't you still, like, usually that's when you even work weekends. Christmas is your cocoa season, they call it, so you should work it. But I said, no, I wanted my staff to have a certain quality of life. I like to be able to spend time with their families, or to be able to even use some of the skills that we've taught them to earn a little bit on the side. And looking at me like, you must be crazy. You're teaching them to do, we'll be sewing for people on the side. But it will happen anyway, right? And you want your people to be fulfilled in a sense and realize that the company actually does care, not in a phony way. To the best of our ability, we will take care of you. And as you are here, it is our duty to make things, we spend so much time at work. When you think about it, we spend a lot of time under our roof. So how do we make sure that when you're here, you feel a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose to what you're doing? And I realized that you can even tell it in the dip in productivity when either a manager or so is probably driving the staff in a certain way that feels a little less human than the Christie Brown way. So it's a culture that early on I really started to nurture. That how do we see people? When you meet someone, you need to see them as human, as people, and they come with their baggage, but they have families. So how do we set up this company to make sure that they're taken care of? So health insurance, it's one of those. The statutory. It's all part of building structure into your business and exercising like good corporate governance as well. So it's things like that. We don't work, not working weekends, not doing Christmas. We go on break.
Oh wow! Okay, so on weekends, when people want to shop, where do they go to?
But the store is open on the weekend. But the factory and the factory, which is where, if you ask me, that's where all the hard work happens. They don't work Saturdays, but the store is open on Saturdays, so the retail team will be here. The things that I established, like coffee mornings with myself, with the CEO, because as Christie Brown got so big. Before it was, listen, I started one tailor, then we were two, and then we were five, and so on. So I knew everybody, I knew everybody's kids, everything. And then I realized, I think last year, that wow, their faces I couldn't even recognize. And that honestly broke my heart. So then I started this session where I take a week and I have like tea. I mean, everybody likes their Milo, but either tea or Milo or whatnot with biscuits. We sit with every department, and I just get to know them, just understand them, and then they hear from me why we're doing what we're doing. Because when it gets so big, they're so far removed sometimes from what the big vision is, and they understand that guys, this is what we're trying to do. What we're trying to build. It's never been done. So you find that that recommitment that they make, and then they connect better with the company, and they understand why they're doing what they're doing. So it's those touch points, and yeah.
But do you find that they also re-motivate you? So, for example, like when you're just feeling, what am I doing? You just have to stop and think, oh wow, but if I don't do this, then all these people that are, that are building with me are stuck, right? So you now have to brush yourself and get up.
Yes, when COVID, when we first had the cases of COVID, that's exactly how I felt. It was, oh, woe is me, what's going to happen? Who's going to buy clothes? The shop has to close, the workshop, everybody has to go home. I was scared. I was really worried. I said, how are we going to do this? And which is where the virtual show came about. The moment we got a chance to even get in there, so let's finish the collection, let's put this out. We have to do something. We have to do something to keep the lights on. We even made nose masks just because it's not what we do, but we repurposed the factory just so that people didn't have to lose their jobs, and we could keep the lights on. Because that's exactly what I thought. Hey, all these people, their family, their kids have to go to school. Yeah, it motivates you. You can't stop. You can't get lazy.
So 2 things you've said that I really like is the fact that you don't work on weekends. Because I know you're even in your office and there's no one there. Right?
There's no one there.
Yeah.
I have to come and open up.
Yeah, and then the second thing about just generally the way you think about your people, I like what you said about the coffee mornings and stuff, but so there's been a lot of growth over the years, right? What role has faith played in the growth of your business?
It's everything. And when you say faith, you mean the faith of faith as in evidence of faith, not faith?
Evidence of
oh, okay. It's everything, because when you even think of, again, the trajectory of Christie Brown and how things have gone, I would never have known that this brand would be where it is today when I started 15 years ago. I didn't even, yes, in as much as I had the dream or the vision to build this luxury fashion, but I don't think I could fathom, at that time where this was going. But it takes a certain level of faith to even still put one foot in front of the other and keep moving. There was a time when I was pregnant with my first child. So he's 9 now. So yeah, this must have been 9 years ago. I was pregnant and I was in Lagos for Lagos Fashion and Design Week at the time. And I was feeling so demotivated. I was, because it's hard, like, right? Entrepreneurs, all the entrepreneurs on the call, you understand it's hard. There are the ups and downs, and there are times where you feel like, why am I doing this? Everybody seems to be light years ahead. I just feel like this hustle is real. It's like, when am I going to get my big break? Is how I was feeling. And so I was not as interested in fashion anymore. I was considering giving up. So I was sitting backstage and there was all this hustle and bustle. And did you guys know Itwen Basti? She's a famous, yes. So Itwen was backstage as well. And she said, we're talking, and I said, I don't even know what this thing. And she said, Aisha, she said, it used to call Christie. Don't stop. She said, you might feel like, you might not even like the collection, but still put out a collection. Like, just don't stop. Just keep moving. And I think that, and imagine if I'd quit then, right? We hadn't even scratched the surface. We still haven't, but we hadn't even scratched the surface of what Christie Brown could even become. But life will make you feel so dejected about things. You start comparing. Yeah, that's all of us. We're comparing. We finished school. Where am I? I can't even really tell where my life is. What I've achieved. I don't own anything. I always used to say. But it's when people like that come into your life, I believe God sent her to speak to me at that moment in time. And it's that for me, it's a faith. It's understanding that there's a bigger calling. There's something. There's a bigger calling to this. There's a bigger why. Or God is orchestrating every move of Christie Brown's for a reason. Now, understanding that helps me to realize that okay, it might be tough, but still, you put your one foot in front of the other. You do the rest. So when I speak about Ruka coming in and I want to give practical example because we all know what faith is. It's just believing and moving, but I want to reiterate why we still have to do. We still have to act. We still have to keep going, keep committing to excellence. As she said, you still put out the collection. So Ruka coming in and saying, I will coach you for at this discounted rate. It's not like she found me maybe in some corner. I wasn't even talking about what my brand, I wasn't putting out anything and she still came and said she helped me. It's because at that time I'd opened my first store. I was trying to stock it. We were still in business, still moving. The brand wasn't where we wanted it to be. But it's from that effort, she saw something that she felt I could add value to this. And then it moved the needle on that. For me, that's where acting on our faith comes from. You don't know if a collection will be great. You don't know if, or your products you're putting, you don't know if the world is going to love. You put it out anyway, believing and trusting that there is room for you, that there's a way made for you and for this, so far as you're walking in line with God. So for me, I feel like there's so many instances that have been faith-based. I didn't know that doing a virtual show during COVID was going to change the game for us. We had 30,000 views on that video, and everybody was glued to their computer. Even if we did a fashion show in Accra, where we won't have that capacity. You have 30,000 people, and even what capacity to house these people? It could never have happened. But that then opened doors for our e-commerce. But here's something: we already had a website. We already had an e-com website. So God is able to use that thing that you have done and then amplify. Exactly. So what is in your hand? So these are certain principles that have also guided the journey over time, right? And this is how I believe that faith has shaped what we do in Christie Brown. Before we start the photo shoot, we pray that God, all the talents that are gathered here, we cause them to shine. When that happens, yours also shines, right? The makeup artist's work is shining. So then your clothes also look, your model also looks better. But I also see the difference between maybe when we've forgotten to pray on set, or I wasn't around to do it. I don't know if the prayer happened or not. And I even see the difference. Please, yeah, sorry. Let's go back to basics. But so it's part of who we are as a brand. We pray in this company. We pray in this company, and we believe God's hand is moving over us. So that's how important it is to the brand and all the moves that have happened. It's not by my efforts alone. Do you see what I mean? You can tell when things are working in your favor and you're meeting certain people. Like, I would never, where would I have met this person had I not just at least acted or moved or put out that collection or even spoken in some way? So we do our part, and then God crowns our efforts with glory.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how has your relationship with God influenced your life and how you live? Before you answer that, I like what you said about your team and how you said we pray in this company. I like that. You didn't say I pray in this company. You said we. Yeah, no, because it's a collective thing. And a lot of times, because a lot of people on this call, I'm sure are like founders and are starting something new. It's very easy to just make it like, oh, it's me and God. Like this vision is God. But like if you carry along your team and you pray together, I feel like it changes a lot. It does. So I like what you said, that we pray, not I pray, not before a collection, I focus on praying. But it's just also getting your team to that point where they're also like invested in it just as you are. And they focus and praying. Yeah.
And when they see you act on that, you would realize that if they are stuck in any moment, we could be in a design session and something is like, oh, Holy Spirit, help us. But even those little things where I'm sure if I'm not there and one of my assistants is struggling one thing or that, I'm hoping that they'll call on the help of the Holy Spirit because they've seen it happen. They've seen it work for Miss Aisha. So, is that being a salt and light, in the company as well. Mm-hmm.
So what I will ask, another question is, what advice would you give young ladies who are building businesses or who are in the fashion industry about putting in structures and building a sustainable business? So you spoke about how you have about 80 people on your team. How have you structured that in a way that is sustainable, and how are you always focused on growth? For example, because we want to make it as practical as possible, right? For example, do you have people who are focused on the growth of Christie Brown? What next for Christie Brown? Like stuff like that. How have you structured your team? And then I'll also ask that everyone can share their questions in the comments so that we can answer them as we go. Yeah.
And you said for young ladies who are in fashion, especially, in this part of the world, we tend to think that you're a great fashion designer if you do everything. So one thing is just understanding what your strengths are and focusing on that, but then also hiring the right people to fill in the gaps and to take on the different departments of the company, which come together to make it move, right? So for us, we would have, there's a whole process. There's a whole end-to-end process for Christie Brown, right? It starts from, of course, the ideation design phase, but then we have an atelier that does the sampling. But within the atelier, you'd have, the atelier is where we do the prototypes, right? But within the atelier, you would have someone who's focused on product development. You'd have the sample makers, but they also have a head. They also have a manager. Now, the people you choose to head the different departments in the company is very important. They need to be aligned with you. They need to be able to challenge you to a bit, because we don't want a bunch of yes men who just go with the flow, but you want people who have conviction and they understand why they're there and what they're meant to be doing and who can rally their team. Because imagine, I can't manage all 80 people. So then you would have the atelier, and then from the atelier it moves to production. And so the production is another unit on its own where, that's where the garments are actually made in the different sizes, etc. They also need their manager and their team, they're almost like their organizational structure within that department. And then from there, it moves to it's quality control and bundling, and it moves to the retail store. But you also have PR and marketing, which is another unit. It's basically you need to set up the company like any other. However, give me any multinational. Oh, Aisha, you used to be a
when you don't have funds, when you don't have the funds, what do you do? When you don't have the funds to hire, okay.
You start small with it, because even if it's just you started by yourself. But of course, you need to grow this business, right? So you can't focus on making every garment yourself. Who's going to handle you? Chances are you'll be too tired to even work on marketing to put it out there. You might try, but once you're focused on one, your attention is divided, and you find that another department falls. So even at that stage, and I gave you an example of how Vanessa joined the company. She was a friend who was helping out and who had acquired certain skills. And I'm making this as basic as possible because now we have a more intricate structure for Christie Brown. It's more, robust or rigid, right? But it didn't start this way.
What's Vanessa's role now in Christie
Vanessa
Brown?
is the head. She heads retail and merchandising. So merchandising is like, I'm sure you guys know, I don't know if I need to explain. It's the science behind the fashion brand. If you ask me, it's how many tops versus jackets versus skirts. It's all pre-planned what we put out, right? So that everything makes commercial sense. So that's Vanessa's role. We have a COO. I sit as COO. We have a COO. Vanessa does retail and merchandising. We're actually hiring. We're looking for a CMO now, but we have someone in the role. We have someone who's looking at partnerships, brand partnerships, and how to, and what you said about growing, what's the next thing for Christie Brown, and certain partnerships that move the needle along. You have finance. I feel like I've forgotten one department. Oh, production is the whole department on its own, but it comes under ops. But I just say this to say that in as much as we're in the creative industry, we still need a certain level of structure. But if you start early, even with the little you have, or with that in mind, it's easier for you to transition into this kind of rigor. But if, no matter what, with as little as you have, sometimes we have friends, we have people who went to school with who are good at one thing or the other. Someone is probably, you're starting out, you're in uni, your friend did business management or business administration. They might give you a few days in the week or part-time. They would help you to structure certain things in your back end, your accounting. If you're not, you may not have all these strengths, but how can you pull on the resources you have? It might be friends and family in the beginning, but it's important to start building in that rigor. I don't keep Christie Brown money. I don't hold Christie Brown checkbook, but from very early too, I didn't dip into company funds because it is an entity we're building. But I just need us all to have that sort of discipline when it comes to that, and separating our personal finances from the business, because it's easier in the beginning, especially in the beginning. You just start taking, use it for this, and then now you see this handbag. You want to dip into the funds of the company, but allow it to grow, allow it to have its own life and its own legs. And it's a long game. So you sacrifice now. You sacrifice in the beginning where your salary, it probably doesn't cover your entire lifestyle, because especially with fashion designers, everybody expects you to be so fabulous. You have all the most expensive things in your closet, but it's not necessary. It's not necessarily the case. Fashion is hard, and especially in the beginning, it doesn't pay off. It pays off later as you scale. So it's building in that rigor and discipline early, even with the little things. How do I put these monies aside? How do I start filing my taxes? Proper registration of your company. Bringing an accountant or even a bookkeeper in early. I did that. So again, you'd say, oh, but maybe you had a lot of money to start. I didn't, but it was really, when I say an accountant, it was very like a bookkeeper at the time, like a local bookkeeper sort of, but at least it was the basics, it was the fundamentals. He was able to say, okay, put this here, bank this, or keep this checkbook for X. And then, your statutory payments.
Yeah, there's something that came to mind as you were speaking, is prioritizing structure as opposed to like the fancy things, maybe getting a big store or getting, so instead hiring the people that would take your business to that next level, that even all these buildings and stuff will not be a big deal anymore. So what nobody can see in the back end, prioritizing that, so that in the long run, the front end will be beautiful, right?
Will be beautiful. Yeah. And it's not pretty in the beginning, and it's not the fun stuff, and we don't actually enjoy doing that. I have so many horror stories of accountants who did one thing or the other, but it shouldn't stop you from still committing to building in that structure, but early. And I'm still learning on, like, we're still even learning about loopholes in the business, that need to be plugged. But we're way better off than if we didn't even start building a structure in the earlier days of Christie Brown. It would be a disaster.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Please, does anyone have any questions? You can put it in the chat box. Please, if you have any questions, put it in the chat box. So I like your advice. You said, obviously, because I was, one question that I had here, but I didn't ask, but I feel like you've answered it in some way, is what advice would you give women who are at the early stages of building? So you've spoken on structure, putting in the right structures, having an accountant super early on.
Oh no, sorry, go on.
No, you can go on. So just any other advice you can think of here.
I would say, when we talk corporate governance, it seems like this big animal, right? Or having a board, or how the company is actually structured, what level of accountability. But if we can start, oh, sorry, somebody just asked, if we can start thinking around that even early in the company, because I didn't start off with ground having a board. I didn't even have a business plan, right? So I find that I have learned a lot along the journey and the need for it. So when I say that it's important to have either a body of sorts that holds you accountable, it is very important. And people who would hold you accountable, but also hold the company accountable, and make sure that you are actually putting in the right systems and processes to take you to where you had envisioned the company going, not a general thing, but basically you're saying, I want to grow my business to X. And there are certain people who have certain skill sets that will plug into that and say, well, if you want to go here, you really should be taking this route and not necessarily that. And they also monitor and steer you in the right direction. It's really helpful. Now we're seeing a board, right, at a certain level. But when you start out, there must be somebody who can call you out on, your BS and say that you very early that, no, don't buy that car just yet, because of where you want to go. And maybe they've been in business, they've seen it happen, or they just have a certain skill set that can help you steer the business. I think it's really important. Processes. For example, I want to make this as basic as possible. I'm now even speaking to you, I just realized how big the company has grown, that I'm speaking in certain terms, but just even the simplest processes that when you start out, how do you then record sales, for example, or how do you, what is the financial process of your little entity that, okay, when money's come in, I take X amount aside for this, and we bank this, or we put this in this bucket for taxes, we put this in this bucket for a profit bucket, or this is where I take my expenses from, or my OPEX account. It can be something as simple as that. Look at me trying to whittle it down. I try to make it as simple as possible of how can you even have or build certain processes that even when you scale, they still make sense. Looking at the risk or that could come up, and just even within the company or within the business, or if this happened, how do we mitigate? Well, how do we mitigate? But if this happened, how do we either pivot? How do we course correct? But just still thinking around this, and it's not all well and dandy that everything by God's grace, is going to be great, it's going to be fantastic. But there will be downsides, or there will be periods where there's an economic downturn. What do you do? How do you cut costs? Let's start thinking that we even early on, but also realizing that we are building brands that will last, that will outlive us. And so if we don't even start succession planning early, or allowing people in to even understudy us and building that structure and the process to say that, okay, if Aisha was not there, we can still put out a collection. It might not be as great as hers, but no problem. We can still use we can still use this formula to put out what needs to be done. Which is why things like merchandising is important. Okay, we know that dresses drive this business. Okay, when I do my collection, I have to have a good number of dresses. But it's that thinking, and building in that structure. It's not sexy, and it's not fun, to be honest. That's not the fun. The fun part is creating something beautiful and doing photo shoots so everybody say ooh and ah. But behind it, let's allow there to be a science to what we do. Let's allow people in as well, because sometimes creators or designers can be very closed off. Oh, I don't want anyone to come because they'll steal my design and so on. But it is, again, that succession planning. God forbid, if you were not around, how can this thing move on if we haven't either empowered other people or trained people to step in our shoes? So these are certain things that now on hindsight, I wish people would start prioritizing quite early. It makes it easier over time.
Thank you for sharing that. And so lastly, I wanted to ask, we've spoken about building with God, right? What words would you like to share with everyone on this call in terms of maybe your relationship with God and how that has driven where you are today?
So, because of my relationship with God, there are certain principles that I guess I live by.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a relationship with God and you are connected, He also is able to convict you. You know, your what we call your conscience, or I would say the Holy Spirit speaking to you would also guide how you live your life and what you do. So for me, humility is a big, it's a big, it's a big deal for me. Like I honestly believe that there's a certain, and humility is not looking down on yourself or playing humble, but truly understanding that we are all God's children. We are all here for a reason. And when you appreciate that, okay, the next person is also probably is meant to take up space. There's a way that you will treat others, which is from a place of not being puffed up with pride. You see, because I believe when people are puffed up with they're looking down on others. They think, oh, I'm better than everyone else. But there's a certain grounding that I think that we all need to be able to even walk into certain doors of greatness. It is not the grandiose nature that gets you in those doors. I know there are narratives like that, like because your larger than life attitude will get you there. But I honestly don't believe in that. I really think that we should all come from a place of appreciation of the next person. And that's where true humility comes. So when I appreciate that you are meant to be here, so just as I am meant to be here, there's a way I treat you with a certain level of respect. So I live my life like that. And then you value people, not use people for what you want and then you dump them and move on to the next. There's no blessing in that. And you might think you get ahead that way, but it's all eventually it will all come crashing down. But valuing people at every stage, and that forms the basis of that humility. Again, I talked about my conscience. I really my intuition. I'm a very intuitive leader. Like a lot of the things you'd hear me say versus saying I think, it will be I feel a way about one thing. This feels right. Or I walk into a certain country, I'm like, there's something about this market. I feel it. But again, it's because of my work. It's because of my spiritual work, and that intuition sharpens over. It has sharpened over the years. That when I make a decision business-wise, I am confident in it, especially when I know that it feels right, because the feeling is in tune with the leading of the Holy Spirit. There's also no, it's really important to me. And I know that my session is not very practical, but it's because
I love
the importance of
there's something that
there's
something I've been saying to myself, and I feel like it's something that's very important. I have the mind of Christ. So you know how a lot of times you don't want to make a decision because you feel like, I need to go and pray. I need to do that. I need to do that. But you are constantly walking with God.
Thank you.
Day. You know, your life is not your own. God is already in the midst of you. God is in the midst of me. So, and I have the mind of Christ. So every single thing that I do, every single thing that I feel, every single thing that I say is because of God backing. So I feel like I really like when you said that, when you say you feel, it's because you have the mind of Christ. And so that's what drives it.
And the more you exercise it, you'd realize it even gets sharper. And you have your wits about you. Another thing I was going to say is I value authenticity a lot and being transparent. Ask people to keep it real, because somehow I can't stand phoniness. No, but and I really value people who live authentic lives. And authentic life doesn't mean they're perfect or they're great or they're good at everything, but it's just they're very accepting of themselves, their flaws, the good, the bad, and for me that's even more remarkable than the packaging. Packaging is good, no problem. Don't get me wrong, to some extent. I mean, you're poised to keep yourself anyway, but even internally, and it goes back to just being in tune with having the mind of Christ, right? And who you are, what your views about one thing or another, or even just living a very authentic life. The moment you are, what you actually feel inside is very different from what you're putting on the outside. There's a disconnect, and there's no balance there. So imagine taking this energy also into business. That I say that I'm about women or women's empowerment as a brand, but then it's not actually at the very core of what we do. It's there's a disconnect there, and you see over time you lose your audience because of that. So I think, and I'm tying this into my personal values and how it's
I
also
love that.
it influences the business, but just living an authentic life and contentment. It might look like you are not driven, but when you understand, again, I say that you're walking in the pace of grace. You, wherever you are, it's like, what do you have in your hand? Wherever you are at any given time is where you were meant to be, or it's where you're meant to be. If you're not meant to be there, I promise you, God will push you. Things will happen around you that will push you into your next thing. But there's a certain contentment that I pray that more women or people would have with wherever they are in their lives, and just trusting the process. And you said something at the beginning. You say being patient and persevering. So as you're saying, I think that's it. Just trust the process. You have put this thing in God's hands. Just trust the process. It doesn't mean you're not ambitious, but you understand where you are and what your position is, what your position is with your Father. So you're not fighting, you're not struggling. And the times where I've tried to be a certain way, maybe I want to seem more driven. Listen, I always fall flat on my behind because it is not me. Again, it's not really authentic to who I am. So it might seem laid back, but it's not, because anyone will tell you in the company that I am very driven. Like, listen, I push everybody and push everybody to excellence. But it doesn't mean let's not be there shouldn't be strive to this grace walk, So those are principles that I live by.
I love that. So someone is asking in the comments that what percentage of your time do you spend on designing now that you have a big team? What percentage do you spend on designing, and how much time do you spend on other things?
So I still do the design for the collections. In as much as I have a team, they assist on it, but it still rests on my head. That's my job. That's what Christie Brown pays me for. That's what Christie Brown pays me for. I also sit as the CEO, one, because I carry the vision as well, and I'm able to drive the entire team and have a certain overview of what needs to happen. Because as founders, it's at your core. Do I want to be doing that? No, I don't necessarily want to always be. I don't want to be the CEO of the company forever, to be honest. I would love to hire somebody even more competent to run the show. And the vision is still birthed with me. I would still love to have that connection with my CEO, that I can say, I'm feeling like this direction, that they can take it and now put, that structure to it, or help me drive the rest of the team to get there. But I actually really enjoy my job in design. I don't get to do that as much lately, but it still rests on me, But I feel that my attention is really divided because I also do the CEO role. You can't bury your head in the dirt and say, I'm just going to design and not care about anything else, because the chips will fall. But if I wanted to split it, it's even 50-50, maybe 30-70. Because, 70 is probably running the business or thinking like overview on the business. Yes, you have your team leads or your heads of departments who are doing all the different functions, but somehow keeping an eye on it all and making sure that we're moving at the pace that we need to. You know what, let's do 60-40. I would say that I am probably doing design for 40 and 60 is losing sleep over Christie Brown. I know it's not very fun, but we'll find our level.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I don't think there are any more questions. The comment says they love what you've said about finding your authentic voice. I think that's very important, especially in fashion and just generally business in general, not to do things because of what everyone else is doing or building, but building specifically to the blueprints that God has given you. And He can only give you something that authentic to you, right? It wouldn't be something that, I don't know, is so off. Yeah, it's so off from your natural personality. But I really like what you said about humility, about finding rest, about being content. I think that those are all characters and traits that are very important in the world today, really, as we build, just that contentment, just, lacking nothing, not wanting for anything, trusting God, that the same God that gave you the vision will sustain it, understanding, and also what you spoke about, understanding the season that you're in. There's a season to build, there's a season to take a step back, there's a season to let other people into your business. I find that, a lot of times with businesses, we struggle to let other people in, but as you said, you can't do it on your own. Succession planning is very important. Because, God forbid, you're ill or something happens, like how do your business just dies with you or just goes with you? Because if you're not able to do it for a month or 2 months or something happens, maybe you're stuck in another country and you can't come back home. There's things that can happen. But then your business doesn't move because you have to put in structures. And I like what you said as well, that people will disappoint you. It's not like it would always be perfect. People you let into your business, they will disappoint you, right? But also knowing that is part of it.
All part of it.
It's part
of learn lessons from it all the time.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that God isn't in your business as well. Yes, it's just
exactly. It's part of it. He didn't say that the road would be smooth. He just said when you go to the fire, it's not bad. But I also wanted to add something about when we're talking about people. One thing that I practice a lot. Anyone who walks in our doors, right? I try to see them or see where their career is going or where it can go. There are people who come and say, "I want to be a fashion designer." But that they might not end up being a fashion designer. But in the period that they're in Christie Brown, my purpose is, or my thing is, let them see so many other departments or functions within fashion that they'll find their calling while they're here. Let Christie Brown be an umbrella. I keep saying like a tree, under which people would find shade or rest or draw nutrients and to move on into their lives to also grow. It's not, we're not meant to be a reservoir of talent and a reservoir of all this greatness, but let's just flow through. We'll never lack. We'll never lack as a company, but with everyone that comes, it's not just what can we get from them? Are they coming to add? But they'll add value. But what are we also adding to their life? So sometimes I realize somebody's coming and they're not performing to our expectations, right? And I can be very irritated, but I sit back and realize that maybe this is not the space for them. I had a young lady like that. She had a heart for the brand. She loves the brand. But somehow I could tell that the brand was sucking the life out of her. Maybe what she wanted to do or where she wanted to be, our expectations, like I said, I can be, I can be a bit of a Miranda. So maybe the expectations are quite high because of the excellence we've committed to. So it doesn't make her bad. It's just this is not the right space for her. So we have to have a chat about that. But you know what? I can tell you're losing yourself by being here because you're kind of committed to the brand, or you like Aisha, or you don't want to let me down. You're still trying to put in your best, but it's just not landing. So we parted ways, and there's no bad blood. We should forever be Christie Brown family. But I like that she's able to move on and do what truly is her calling, or what truly gives her peace of mind. Because maybe these my deadlines and all these expectations too were a bit much for. But she will learn. But she probably learned something through that, experience of working, whether under pressure, whatever it is, or even learning more about herself. That okay, I thought I wanted this, but not in this way. This is not actually the field I want to be. So we must always just, see how we can pour into others as they pour into us as business owners.
I love that. I even love what you said about how you want people to feel when they come into Christie Brown. Because at the end of the day, you are a vessel, and out of you flows rivers of living water. So everyone that comes must also have that flowing through them. And you have to allow them to go through, allow them to go through their So we
Because
have
I'm always talking to the retail staff about that. Like people walk in with so much baggage, and women, we carry so much. I said when they walk in our doors, let them feel like no matter what it is, here we see you. You know, so yeah. Whenever I see like a lackluster hello, like can I help you? It irks me. It's like, we're here because of them. Oh, come on, fix that attitude. But it's that's the energy and the culture.
I love that
Feel.
I love that intention. So someone is asking, what advice would you give a woman in her late 20s who is starting a fashion brand? So that would be the last question.
Okay.
And one more thing, we have a sweet comment from Cecilia Danso. She said, this has been an insightful meeting. Aisha's client who has grown a love for her heart, how authentic she is. What you see online is what she is as a person. I'm also an entrepreneur. Learned a lot from her from afar about people, humility, building structure, and having a relationship with God. So yeah, thank you, Aisha.
So people are watching.
Yeah,
exactly. The right way then.
Exactly.
So the first one was someone in your late 20s.
40s.
Did you say 40s? Ooh, okay. And starting a business in your late 40s when the whole world makes you feel like if you didn't start in your 20s, then you have not arrived. It is your journey. But you've started. The important thing is that you have started. So again, it is doing the work to just honing on, why am I doing this? What is driving this vision? Go back to the why. It's so important. It's not even about what you're putting out there or what product, which is what you're doing or how you're doing it, but it's why are you doing this in the first place? Now, the why I always say needs to be much bigger than ourselves or even wanting to buy our kids the best clothes or take our kids to the best school. People would say that, I'm doing this, I work so hard so my kids could have a certain life. It is, we have a bigger purpose and a bigger calling on this earth as kingdom people, as God's chosen vessels. And so please try and spend time to just even understand why you're doing this and the lives you're meant to be impacting. It takes deep work, it takes prayer, and it takes connecting with even yourself better. In your 40s, I think I've seen it all, but sometimes I don't think to be. When you understand.
I cannot be. Mommy.
Oh, there you are. I know, we're almost done. Auntie's talking too much.
Okay, go. Okay, yeah, sorry.
So I was saying, yes, that deep work of why you're doing this, because that's what will sustain you. That's what will keep you going when it's tough. Oh, she really wants to be. Sorry, let me carry on. Yes, that deep work of why your company or why you're doing what you're doing and the lives you're meant to impact. Chances are it's bigger than yourself and bigger than just feeding your family. Now that is what will sustain you even when it gets tough, when it gets rough. And I also said that just committing to excellence, because when you always want to put out good work, you want to do well with, and be a good custodian of this gift, it will keep you evolving. You never settle in mediocrity. You just keep testing yourself, keep learning along the journey. In the beginning, and especially starting a little later, and like you don't look around you too much. It can get really distracting. The noise, the comments, and the comparison. For now, block out everything. Be almost tunnel vision on where you're taking this thing, why you're doing this first of all, and where this can potentially go. Dream big. Think your loftiest vision of this business that you're starting. It's valid. But as you're praying more, you're connecting more with God, that He will put that vision in your mind's eye. You're not thinking about it just on your own, because otherwise that would be based on what others have done. But when you do the deep work and spend time focusing on where is this really going and why am I doing this, I think that's fundamentally what, as for the structure, we know is you can get all the, you can get the tools online. I mean, people say it's enough time. You will build that, but I think that the foundation and the deep work needs to be done because that's what will give you the staying power in this terrain.
Yeah, thank you so much. I completely agree. Thank you, Aisha, for today.